Tell me a second. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Zach, can you type in the chat that you can hear us loud and clear? Yeah.
Yeah, so we're online and
Yeah.
a couple people run.
Hey, why kick it off?
So people get their thing going and sit down and.
Yeah, we'll get started. I think Neil's only got 121 slides, it looks like. So it's short, we're gonna have a short presentation tonight. Yeah, well, thanks everybody for joining us. We got 5 people online listening in, and then we got people here in the room. Online folks, we're trying to make this as user friendly for you to follow along, and so you're not going to see me or any of the presenters tonight, but you'll hopefully hear us, and then you're going to see the PowerPoint presentation right there front and center. So thank you for everybody being here. I'm Dylan Tabish with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I think I know everybody in the room here, but for anybody online, I'm the Regional Communication Education Program Manager for Region 1 Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And I'm just going to go through some housekeeping stuff to get this season setting meeting started. What are we doing here tonight? This is part of the process that happens every 2 years where we go through a very extensive and comprehensive review of our hunting regulations and look for possible updates. And we do that hand in hand with sportsmen and collect a lot of public input throughout the process, and then it goes before the commission. So I'll talk a little bit more about the process here, but the main piece of information tonight is that this is all for informational purposes to help sportsmen kind of have informed comments that they can make to the commission and to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. We're not taking official comment tonight, so this isn't, although I'm recording this presentation, this isn't a formal comment period. So public comment, I've started for this 2-year season setting process back in June. We scoped through the summertime. Our biologists gathered information through their districts. We refined recommendations. It went through an internal process, and now it's back out for a second round of public comment process through November 21st. So you got a week until the comment deadline. I'm going to show you here on the next slide how to make sure you get those comments in, because those comments are going directly to the Fish and Wildlife Commission. We've got some proposals that we're going to go over tonight. Those were developed through that public process in the summertime and with our biological review and our biologists, but now everything is going to the commission. So comments are going towards the commission for a final decision, which will be made at the December 14th meeting. And these are for the 2024-2025 seasons. I'm just going to show everybody where they can find all this information and make a comment. Hoping this is going to track for the online folks. So here is the website. I'm just going to show you. If you start at our main homepage, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks homepage, scroll down, and right here, front and center, comment period is open for proposed hunting regulations. Click on that, and this will take you to the place where everything is located. So all the information, statewide, regional, is on this page. The meeting schedule for where these public meetings have been occurring. So let's look at deer and elk seasons and regulations. So if you want to comment on deer and elk seasons proposals, there's the proposals for each of the regions along with justifications. This is a new resource this year that I think is super helpful. This shows you how the actual regulations booklet will physically change. So it shows you, because we're all kind of, I think, trained to think of regulations by the way they look on the regulation booklet, or at least I am. This will show you actually how the regulation booklet will change if these changes are adopted. So
That's very helpful.
yeah, super helpful. I think this is great because I don't know, my mind works this way. So I think of regulations, I think of what they're going to look like in the booklet. So hopefully this is a good resource, and I encourage everybody to read all the justifications, because there's probably tons of really good relevant information that might answer a question you have in the justifications for all the proposals, but then this will show you actually what could change in the regulation booklet. So and then here you want to write your comments. This is the portal to do that right here. So Deer and Elk, you put your name, city, where you're from, email, and then put your comments right in there, and those go directly to the commission. And so there's one of these for all the different proposals that the commission will be reviewing at their December meeting. So let me get out of this. So that's the website. Hopefully everybody can find this. We got a lot of good stuff on the website, but sometimes there's a lot of too much stuff, so it can be hard to find. So tonight, we're not going to cover all the statewide proposals. We're going to focus on Region 1's proposals, and then the statewide, meaning proposals that encompass everything in the state. We're not going to go over Region 2 proposals, Region 3, Region 4. That there is good information on those on the justifications page that I just showed you. So before I hand it off, any questions about anything I just covered? Anybody on the online meeting? If you have a question throughout this, please type it into the chat so that way we can see it. And then we'll answer any questions you have throughout the chat. So if Neil or one of our biologists has something and it makes you think of a question, just go ahead and type it right into the chat. And then once we get to the end of each section, we'll address those questions and answer those. So any questions? Okay, so I'm going to keep things moving and hand it over to Neil. So Neil, I don't know if I can. Oh, there you go. Cool. Yeah, so let's do it this way.
Just up and down.
Side to side. There you go.
Okay, so I'm Neil Anderson. I'm the wildlife manager for Region 1. I'll just do a brief introductions, even though you folks online can't see him. So we have Lee Anderson, he's a regional supervisor here in attendance. Franz Engelfinger, he's the Kalispell area biologist, and Ethan Lula, he's the Eureka area biologist. And we also have Commissioner Tabor in attendance tonight too. So, and Zach Farley, our biologist out of Thompson Falls, is joining in online. So we're going to go over some of the statewide proposals first, and starting with mountain goats. Currently with mountain goats, we do not have an specific archery season. So this proposal is a statewide proposal that would initiate a archery season for archery equipment only, starting the first Saturday of September through the September 14th. So it won't overlap with the current general rifle season. Again, there's currently no archery season for mountain goats. This would be for archery equipment only, but you can use archery equipment during the general rifle season as well if you so choose. We had also added definition for an adult female goat. We don't currently have one. We have one for bighorn sheep, but not for mountain goats. And we just define a female mountain goat as a 1-year-old or older, and kids or young of the year would not be included in that definition. And I'll go through some of these statewide proposals, and then we'll open it up for questions, but we'll get through a couple of these first.
Click. You have to click it on there.
Yeah. Oh, similar to mountain goats, moose also do not have an archery only season. And so this would be very similar to mountain goats. It would propose an archery only season for the first Saturday of September through the September 14th. And these would be for districts that do not conflict with a general rifle season. There are a few that start early. In that case, there would not be an archery season in those areas. So there are additional changes, I think, in other regions. You might want to consult the webpage, but this is basically establish a archery only season early in September for moose. For mountain lion, there's a proposal to eliminate the fall and archery quota for mountain lions, which would, and simply retain the overall quota for the entire season. Currently, the way it works is that 20% of the licenses or the quota is allocated for harvest in the archery in general. And once that 20% is reached, the archery and general season are closed down for mountain lions. We typically don't get a very high harvest in mountain lions. It's usually less than 5% of the harvest during the archery and general season. So this would eliminate the need to actually track it on the web page to see if it's open or closed. The archery and general season would remain open regardless of how many lions are harvested. Those lions, however, would come off of the total quota for the winter season. Again, we typically don't see very many. We don't think this is a resource issue, and it won't greatly restrict or reduce the overall quota in any one district.
It just click, right? Yeah, there you go.
For deer, there's a statewide proposal out there that will clarify the bag limit for resident deer hunters. Right now, we don't have a good clarification on that. State statute actually allows for resident hunters to hold up to 7 B licenses. So you can purchase up to 7 of those if they're available. This proposal would help eliminate some of the confusion when applying for multiple B licenses. So the language below is what's in the quotes. And basically it says a hunter may possess up to 7 deer B licenses in any combination. And a hunter may harvest 1 deer for each license held, which may total 8, which if you include the general license. So you can actually harvest up to 8 deer in Montana. But that does not include game damage or management B licenses, which don't count towards that total. So those would be additional opportunities. Again, this is something that will help clarify the language and help hopefully clear up some of the confusion. Because right now, I think, especially when you're applying for some of these game damage licenses, it's been a little bit confusing in the past. The other thing that we're proposing is to eliminate quota ranges for all deer and elk permits. In the past, biologists could ask the commission for a quota range for permits, and then we could work within that quota range to change things up or down as we felt fit. I think we'd like to try to get that towards controlled a little bit more by the commission. And so this would remove that quota ranges that the biologists could work within, and any change to a special permit for elk or deer would then have to go in front of the commission for approval. But this does not apply to the B licenses, which is different. Those are typically antlerless. Not all of them are, but it's typically antlerless licenses. We still have a quota range that the biologists can use to adjust based on survey information that suggests where the population is doing better. We can increase it, or maybe not doing as well, and we can decrease the number of B licenses available.
Used to have to go through legislation, right?
So the question was, did that have to go through legislation? No, it did not have to go through legislation. We asked the commission for a quota range to work in, and they would approve a range like from 5 to 100.
Then 5 to 100, if they wanted to like take that 5 away and be like, okay, there's absolutely none. And then they wanted to reset a quota. Didn't legislation have to reset that or something?
So the question is basically, if we got rid of all of our B license opportunities and had no B license opportunity, would we have to go back to the legislature to? We wouldn't have to go back to the legislature. We would have to go back to the commission to reestablish an antlerless license, which is still true. If we eliminate those and we want to bring a license back, we still have to go through the commission process to bring a season back, to bring a license type back. So yeah, if we eliminate all of them, and we have no B licenses out there, and then 3 years down the road, your numbers come up and we want to establish a B license, we would have to go through this commission process, and the commission to make that decision, not the legislature. So. And this is also another proposal out there. Right now, there's not a definition for what first and only choice means. I think we have all thought that was fairly intuitive, but in the regulations, there's actually not a definition for that. So this would actually provide a definition that should hopefully improve the clarity and clear up any confusion. And again, the language is a person applying for a first and only choice license / permit is limited to that specific license permit only for that species and will not be allowed to select a second or a third license permit opportunity when applying. So in other words, you can only apply for one. It has to be your first and only choice. Licenses and or permits issued through a drawing identified as first and only choice opportunity will not be offered as surplus license permit opportunity if the department receives fewer applications than the number of licenses permits available. So basically what it's saying is if we don't allocate all of those licenses and it's designated as first and only choice, they're not going up on surplus and will not be available through surplus. Another statewide proposal. And this is something we typically have to go to the commission for, and it's just to establish some quotas for game damage, CWD hunts and urban hunts. And it just tells it kind of where our limits are in terms of how many animals we can harvest through game damage. For Region 1, for instance, if we have game damage out there, we cannot harvest more than 800 deer if this proposal goes through, which we typically don't do anyway. That's a pretty high number, as well as 500 elk. And I don't know if that we've reached that in a long time, if ever. So it's a pretty high number, but it gives us some leeway to operate within the game damage program. For CWD hunts, which we do have in Region 1 near Libby, it sets the quota, statewide quota, at 5,000. So there are other CWD hunts in the state. All combined, we cannot reach more than 5,000 deer, 1,000 elk, or 20 moose. It also sets a max harvest for urban deer. So those are the basically city deer plans at 1,370. And that's what the proposal is. And basically all this does is sets limits on how many animals can be harvested during those specific hunts. And then there's also a statewide proposal to define a muzzle loader in weapons restricted areas. So we have weapons restricted areas in our regions and a couple different places. And right now there's not a really good definition for what is a muzzle loader. This definition will clarify things and it'll be more consistent with how things are being enforced in the field. And so basically, you can read it there, muzzleloader by this definition must not be capable of being loaded from the breech of the barrel, may not be loaded with any pre-prepared paper or metallic cartridges, must be charged with black powder, Pyrodex, or an equivalent, must be ignited by a percussion, flintlock, matchlock, 209 primer, or wheel lock mechanism, must be a minimum of 45 caliber, and may have no more than 2 barrels. And that would be the definition that would show up in the regulations. So that's a lot of few different proposals out there, but are there any questions? I think you already had one, but any other ones? Check them.
I'm watching the
Okay.
chat.
And if you think of some questions later on too, our door is always open. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions if something comes up. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to switch over to the area biologists, and they're going to talk about the Region 1 specific proposals. So I think who's up first? That would be Ethan. Okay.
What are you using the switch between slides?
So you just click right.
Okay, I got you on there. I think we go to. Always afraid of presentation mode.
Yeah, you and me both.
Broke it. I did break it. There you go. That's a little prettier.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, there we go. All right, so my name is Ethan Lula. I'm the wildlife biologist up in Eureka. Today I'll be presenting 3 different proposals we have for deer in Region 1. 2 of them which are going to be focused around the Libby area. Unfortunately, Libby biologist Tanya Chilton-Verdant wasn't able to make it here tonight. So I'll do my best. You're going to have to deal with me if I have some gaps in knowledge, but we'll get through it. First one is whitetail deer proposal for the CWD license, the 19920, which is an either sex B license centered only valid within that 10-mile Libby CWD area. As a little bit of background there, just as a reminder, chronic wasting disease was found in Libby in 2019, or excuse me, 2018. And we had our first round of these tags being issued in 2019, 2020. You can see up in the upper left hand of the screen there the sample numbers that we've been getting over the past years. And you can notice that we've been seeing a decline in the number of actual CWD samples. These samples are important to help, monitor the spread of CWD as well as estimate prevalence within that management zone. And it's concerning that we are seeing a reduction in the numbers there. So the current proposal is to require actually a mandatory CWD test for any one of those, any deer harvested on that 19920 CWD license. This proposal also, as written right now, would limit the number a hunter could acquire to one. This here is, again, the purpose of this is to bolster the number of samples we use to estimate CWD prevalence, as well as spread the opportunity a little more equally among some of the hunters wanting to buy that license. And should I just stop after, since there's only three, should I just stop after each one? Or what would anyone prefer?
I do have a specific question as it relates to what Neil asked, and that would, does that count against your 7 cumulative beat?
It would.
This
Yes,
one.
yeah, this one would.
So just a clarification, so when we first proposed this to go to a limited license, we did not anticipate there would not all be issued on the drawing. And the last 2 years where it was on a limited draw, we've not allocated all those to the drawings, they went to surplus. And you saw the statewide presentation on the number of B licenses you could hold. So when they went to surplus, you could now buy up to 7 B licenses if you so choose. And since it's either sex, we heard a lot from local folks up there that they're upset that people could now shoot potentially $8 in that area if they bought all the licenses. So this, as Ethan said, this is an effort, at least the part about limiting the number of hunters that they can acquire to one, to spread out that opportunity. Because we also hear from folks when they sold out on the surplus that they didn't have an opportunity to buy one and they really just missed the boat, basically. So this hopefully would spread out that harvest and allow more people an opportunity to purchase these licenses.
Yeah.
And the quota stayed 2,000, right?
The quotas, you're not asking to change the quota. It's
Yeah.
2,000.
2000 still. Jim?
And so you show almost a 50% drop in CWD samples, which is really unfortunate. So I support the mandatory. But do you know what harvest has been in those 3 years? Has it stayed stable?
We don't,
I don't.
the thing is, we don't know what, so the question was, I don't know if folks online could hear that. The question was, do we know what harvest has been? I think specifically on that license, and we don't.
Okay.
This, by making it a mandatory reporting and testing, we should get a better idea of just what the percentage of licenses are being filled. All we will get from this when we do harvest surveys, we'll get just a number of animals that were harvested in the district, but not necessarily for that license type.
Right.
One of the concern is that because people can buy so many, might be that window shopping thing where, well, I get 7, so you buy a bunch and then realize that you have to process that many and maybe those licenses go unfilled, or if somebody had one, it might be more than $1. And
All right, moving on to the next one. All right, that's got a. So this is a mule deer proposal. If you can't read it there because of the display, this is specific to the special mule deer permit area 10350, where there are currently 13 permits there. This would also require mandatory CWD testing for any mule deer harvested on those permits. This is largely due to last year having found a whitetail deer test positive with CWD just on the southern end of that special management zone. With the risk here is, I mean, in a special management zone where we are managing for an older age class of buck, CWD is known to spread more rapidly whenever you have an older age class of deer there. So there is a conflict or a risk to the herd, a potential risk to the mule deer population there but we also recognize that the popularity of that limited permit area. And so to try to bolster our samples in mule deer and to keep an eye on this, the proposal is to require mandatory testing of any mule deer harvested within that permit area. As you can see here, for the last 5 years, we've seen between 4 and 7, 7 samples of total mule deer coming out of, I believe is that in the whole district, or is that just out of that area? So not a high sample size there. Something we're definitely wanting to better eye on. So,
What's the success been on?
It's another one of those ones where we don't get good information, but it's not been 100%. It's close to about 40%, and a little bit higher in some years.
any questions on this one? Any others? Okay. All right. Finally, we have a whitetail deer proposal specific to the Eureka area in the Tobacco Valley, Hunting District 101. Where we have been experiencing for the last 4 years pretty significant game damage issues caused by whitetail deer numbers in the valley, primarily early season on alfalfa on the croplands there. This proposal is designed to would designate a portion of a hunting district, being the North Tobacco portion there, primarily the actual Tobacco Valley, for the purposes of managing whitetail deer. The rest recruitment in this hunting district 101 is pretty variable, but even in our more mountainous areas, the more forested landscapes, we tend to be having stable. Last year had some pretty low fawn recruitment, whereas within the Tobacco Valley, recruitment has been stable to increasing for the last 4 years, and game damage has increased as a result on this. So the objectives here are to actively reduce local deer density in the Tobacco Valley. Sort of a tangential objective to this is also reduce local deer densities around the town of Eureka, where we do have, an urban deer population that seems to be growing and causing conflict as well. Reduce damage to agricultural crops is a second objective. And finally, also to provide some additional antlerless harvest for hunters up in the hunting district. The way this would work, this proposal would create an unlimited or an over-the-counter license for antlerless whitetail deer, valid only on private lands in this northern tobacco portion of the hunting district. Again, trying to mitigate damage on private lands is something that is kind of a primary aspect of this, and don't want to overly burden the public lands in this area with antlerless harvest. To align with game damage conflicts, the season would begin August 15th for the general season and run through all the way through the archery and general seasons. In addition, this would provide a limit of 2 tags per person, so 2 B licenses per person. And finally, with this, there is currently an already existing private land B license for the entire hunting district. There's 200 of them out there. They're valid only for private lands. But this would what the intent of this proposal is to focus harvest just in this northern tobacco portion. So we would take that existing 101 license, remove the private land restriction, thereby still providing some antlerless opportunity for deer for the rest of the hunting district outside of this zone. And also, but with that would need to reduce the quota to back to 100, so we don't inadvertently overburden some of our more mountainous deer populations. So, all right, any questions on that one? All right, well, I will turn this over to Franz.
Ethan. Let's see. Hi, I'm Franz Engelfinger. I'm the Kalispell area wildlife biologist. I'm going to go over a couple different proposals for deer, elk, and bear, largely within my management area, but also some that extend throughout Region 1. The first I want to talk about is a proposal for whitetail deer in hunting district 130. And the proposal is to eliminate either sex harvest opportunity during the first week of the general season and change the season structure to a 5-week buck only regulation. If you recall, back in 2022, during the simplification process, we went to slow down. Thanks, Ethan. Back in 2022, when we went through the regulation simplification process, we tried to unify our regulations across every single hunting district in Region 1. And so at that time, while the hunting district 130 was a 5-week buck only season prior to that, in 2022, it shifted so that the first week you could harvest a doe with your general tag. That was met with a lot of concern by local hunters who felt that the local game population there of deer couldn't sustain that. And in part because what they'd seen in the last couple of years is we'd been seeing fairly strong recruitment, but low harvest. And what this graph illustrates is our harvest over time, which has a declining trend. Following this spring's deer recruitment surveys, we also saw low recruitment due to a tough winter. And so what we're proposing is to pull back and again, make hunting district 130 a 5-week buck only season, eliminating that doe harvest opportunity during the first week. So any questions on this one? Any questions about the deer proposals we've seen? Pausing for online as well. All right, on to elk. I have 2 elk proposals here in the Kalispell area. The first one is for hunting districts 120 and 130, and there it is to remove either sex opportunity on a general license for holders of a permit to hunt from a vehicle. Currently, in these districts, folks that hold a permit to hunt from a vehicle can shoot a cow on their general tag. Currently, there's no B license opportunities for cows in either of these districts, and so we're creating an opportunity where one doesn't exist for the general public. This again is a holdover from the license simplification process where we eliminated all our B cow tags in hunting districts 120 and 130. And so to make the opportunity consistent and align it with our goals to increase elk populations in these districts, we are eliminating that opportunity or proposing to eliminate that opportunity to harvest a cow with your permit to hunt from a vehicle. I will say that in any district within the region where there are B licenses for cows issued, folks that have a permit to hunt from a vehicle can harvest a cow on their general tag. So that's like units 100, 104, 121, 122. Most of the western half of Region 1, you can still do this, but we're proposing again to eliminate that opportunity to harvest a cow with a permit to hunt from a vehicle in 120 and 130, because currently we don't offer that opportunity with B licenses. Any questions with that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a couple questions here. Why isn't there statewide mandatory harvest reporting for all whitetail deer for all seasons and locations? Would this not give FWP more accurate data to work with? So that's an ongoing discussion, probably beyond the scope of even the season setting process here, as to whether we all go to a mandatory reporting or we stick with the current system we have, which is the calling, which is not actually isn't a bad system. There's a lot of discussion, and I'm thinking we're working more towards giving folks an opportunity to report harvest, either through the e-tags or on my FWP. It's a work in progress. But right now, I think that's a little bit more of almost a statewide question, and probably not one we're going to be able to address, at least right now in this proposal. It's something we're talking about. I know in states that have mandatory reporting, it only works if the stick is pretty strong. In other words, the penalty for not reporting is pretty stiff, and where it's not very stiff, it doesn't work very well at all. So all I can say is that we're looking into it. It's probably beyond the season setting process, and that would be more of a statewide type of an ask than it would be just a regional. Then there's another one from Don Wilkins. The premise of eliminating the permit to hunt from a vehicle was to grow more elk. Right now, the He has no idea how many of the permit to hunt from vehicle antlerless elk are harvested in the rest of the region. Maybe mandatory reporting for the permit to hunt from the vehicle. We're not asking for that because it's on a general license. And we don't ask other folks who are out there hunting to report theirs as well, because there's no mandatory reporting. We will get an estimate of cow harvest through our hunter harvest survey, which will give us an idea of how many cows are actually harvested. But by eliminating this, at least in these two districts, there should not be any cow harvest at all, except for maybe archery season. So I don't know if that answers all those questions, but yeah. Let me make sure I got that. Return from the vehicle. Yeah, we haven't asked for that. I think that's another thing that would be more of a statewide request. If we ask all permit to hunt from the vehicle to report, there are other regions that have similar type opportunity. So they probably need to ask the same thing. And I guess that's just not something we can propose, but those are comments. So if you like those comments, please put them into the comment section so the commission can see those.
Moving on to our next proposal for elk in the region. We're proposing to establish a antlers B license for hunting district 170. This license would be valid on private land and within that section that is north of Lake Brain Road and west of Highway 35. This is the same area within the hunting district where someone can harvest a cow on their general tag. It will be valid from the archery season through the late season, February 15th. Limit one tag per hunter, and with a quota range of 5 to 100, with a proposed start of 25 licenses. And again, you know, the rationale here is that within the Flathead Valley, we're seeing our elk numbers increase, while at the same time our harvest opportunities declining as areas are getting subdivided and developed. We're also seeing an increase in game damage complaints. So we're trying to add another tool with which we can help stall or stop that growth of the valley herd within that portion that we're seeing those issues with growth. Any questions on this one? We've reviewed the elk proposals. On to black bear. We have a proposal that would apply to hunting districts 140, 141, 150, and 170, and that would be to extend the spring bear season to June 15th. Currently, spring season ends May 31st. This change would bring these districts in line with hunting district 130, and the goal here is basically our wilderness districts 141, 150, as well as portions of 140. Our access in the spring is limited by snow, and typically we see a relatively lower number of bears harvested in these districts during the spring season. And so extending it to June 15th will provide a little more opportunity, a little more pressure on the local population. And in our bear management unit 170, it's our urban area around the Flathead Valley. The goal here is to provide a little more opportunity for harvest to, in part, perhaps reduce bear densities where we see conflicts. Question from Whitney.
So your 110, 101, and 100. Is there a reason why those? Because I mean, those are tough to get into at times. I mean, when we have a lot of snow, and I mean, there's a lot of bears in those three districts.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason why those couldn't be extended another 15 days or?
Yeah, I'll let Ethan, those are his districts, so.
110 probably could have been. 101 actually sees a fair amount of harvest every year. And looking into some of it are female. What we look at is sort of a gauge proportion of females in harvest. And 101 is creeping up there to where that wasn't probably a good idea for this one. I can't speak to 100. 110, you know, probably. It's just at this time to put it in.
So to build on that.
So one of the things that we've seen when you extend the season, later, we see a higher proportion of female in the harvest. And so that's one of the things we have to be watching for as well, is some of these districts are getting close to a point where we get additional female harvest, we start worrying about the population taking a pretty good dive and actually driving it down pretty hard. Again, the proposal right here is to offer opportunity, the exception of maybe 140, which has got a fair harvest, but to kind of a consistent block there that typically doesn't get a lot of harvest. So you look at those primarily Bob Marshall units as well as the urban area around Kalispell. We just don't harvest a lot of bears there. We're not really worried about bear numbers for that reason. So we thought we could offer additional opportunity. I think before we offered in 110, one of these other ones, we'd look at that female harvest ratio to see how many we're harvesting. And if increasing it into that June period would actually increase female harvest enough to where we're starting to drive those populations down.
And to that point, when this proposal was put together, we did look at both harvest numbers as well as the proportion of females in the harvest. And so in these districts that we're proposing, the 10-year average of female harvest is less than 25% in all these districts. And in most of them, it's under 20. So another sort of reassurance that these districts can support them. Some of those other ones, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I recall 2 years ago when we had looked at that a little bit more closely, some of these districts were at that 40% or higher. One of the other reasons why they're not in this proposal.
So I might just comment that the likelihood that we'll go June 15th across the state is pretty high. And so the mechanism then to protect any region, district like 110 or whatever would be that to have that female quota. So you have the ability to shut a district down if you're concerned about it. But be consistent statewide on a closure. Reason being that one of the things we've been hearing a lot from half the districts that do this, half that don't, is you get pushing of hunter pressure again. And so if one area closes, you haven't filled your tag, everybody floods to the one that's still open. So what we might want you guys to do, as well as some of the other regional directors, is start thinking what our female quota need to be, and then you would have the mechanism to shut it down if you're concerned. So if you see it creeping up to the 40%, say, okay, we're closed in 110, we're done. And that's that. And that's because you're concerned about the population at the level. So we get to the same basic scenario, but this will be uniform across the state.
And did the folks online hear that? That was Commissioner Neighbors. I'll give a thumbs up or something.
Earlier, he was able to be.
Okay. I just want to make sure they could hear what you're saying.
So we would appreciate comments in that regard, coming through the portal. Because, like I've received a lot, as we have in other regions, direct to the commissioners, where it's like, why are we doing these different dates? Why don't we just control it by road like we do everything else?
So currently there is no proposal out there, so that would be a change that the commission would
Yeah,
make.
it's going to be it's basically going to be an amendment that you'll see rolling through
Okay.
whatever they post to the commission.
Okay. So I don't know if folks heard that, but it sounds like there are plans, at least on the commission side, to make an amendment to standardize the season to end on June 15th. Statewide.
And then manage any hunting district or BMU that has concerns about creeping up to that 40%, do it via quota.
So having the opportunity to basically shut the season down if you reach a certain benchmark.
Right.
Isn't that the rest of the state? They just basically go to the 15th of June. And
It's variable.
I'd say it's about 65-70% June 15th, something like that.
I
So
think we're the only ones that don't shut
no,
down.
there's a couple in Region 3 and Region 5. So that's why. Because you get pushing around and so making it all uniform, but then still manage it. We want to manage it. We just want to do it uniformly. And then when you get to the 2 thing, we'll talk about that as well.
That's next. Yeah, Jim.
Black bears, the trophy hide. And how much more likelihood is it to get a rugged hide to go to June 15th? I assume there's much more higher likelihood to get a rub tide.
Yes, I don't know if they can hear that online. The question was, what is the likelihood that you'll get a rub tide if you go into June 5th? Yeah, I don't have a percentage, but obviously the later you get into the year, the better the chances for having a rub. I worked in Region 3 for quite a while. We would see a fair number of animals coming in with rubs, but it's kind of on the hunter to recognize what they're seeing and what they're shooting. Usually it's around the face and different places like that first. And sometimes on the back, but it's definitely a possibility, especially if we get a warm spring. You could see a few more rub tides.
Unlikely to shoot. Big risk, as said, was big risk is the increased chance of female harvest. You do see an increased proportion of females harvested in those last 2 weeks. You do the rest.
All right, another Blackbird proposal from Region 1 is to request submission of 2 premolars from Region 1 harvested bears. Currently, we only require the submission of 1 premolar, and a 24-hour mandatory reporting is still required. So a year and a half ago, is it a year and a half or 2?
So the second,
So
2 years.
You were the pilot.
Yeah.
Region.
So 2 years ago, we went from having mandatory reporting and bringing the animal into the office or to a satellite office to pull a tooth and have the hide sealed from Region 1 bears. We went to a policy where folks could simply call in 24 hours, report, but then submit a tooth within 10 days by mail. And that's been fairly successful, or drop off. And that's been very successful. We've had good compliance, and approximately we're able to obtain ages from those teeth on 93% of the harvested bears. What this proposal would do is by having folks submit 2 premolars, we have a better chance of closing that gap and getting a good age on just about every bear that's harvested. And that's essential for us as we think about, trying to understand the age structure of our population. And so the goal again is to increase our ability to obtain ages from harvested bears.
The only thing I would add to that is the 93% for us in Region 1 is adequate because we harvest a lot of bears. The concern is because this is a pilot project, so we're kind of doing a test run in Region 1 to see how well it worked. The concern is if that starts to drop much lower for regions that, and the desire is to expand this to other regions that don't harvest as many bears, that they may not get enough, a large enough sample to actually help inform management. So if it gets down below 85% or so, it could be an issue for regions like 4 or 5, and the eastern regions of 6 and 7. So we're asking for 2 teeth just to see if we can actually bolster that at all. For us, 93 is perfectly adequate. But for those other regions where they don't harvest as much and should the commission decide to expand this to other parts of the state, we want to see if we can actually bump it up a little bit. And it'd be something that, again, this is a pilot project. So we're kind of messing with things a little bit just to see if we can increase our success somewhat. But 93 is a really good percentage. It's higher than what other states who have a similar type of reporting have, which their average is right around 85%.
So this will be another one that will have an amendment. It was designed to be a pilot. It's a success. This was a customer service issue all along to make it convenient for the hunters. And quite frankly, to not be such a draw on the resources of the department. I think we all remember how difficult it was on people to try to find somebody that could pull a tooth, and especially when people are leaving town and all that. So it's likely that there'll be amendment that the way you're proposing it now will just be applicable statewide for all regions. So 2 teeth molar, and everybody will be doing it statewide and based on the results that you guys can produce. And the fact that we'll probably get an improvement off of the second tooth. There's confidence. Now, if we go another 2 years and we get some lackluster statistics from those other regions, we can consider whether or not that's cause for having to do something different there. But then you'll also have your data from your fur collecting process, so like,
Oh, the DNA project.
yeah, so it may go to a completely different, population estimate process statewide, like that,
Yeah, the age is actually helping inform that quite a bit. And that's why we want to maintain the ages. So we use both of those to help estimate the population age as well as the DNA market capture population estimate.
Okay.
Any questions on bears? All right, mountain lion proposal here in Region 1, within hunting districts 141 and 150. These are what I call our wilderness districts. They're largely encompassed by the Bob Marshall Wilderness and the Great Bear Wilderness. The proposal is to allow hunting during the winter season with any valid lion license. Currently, you need an unlimited special lion license to hunt these districts. In these districts, we harvest only a handful of lions each year, and prior to the 22 season, you could harvest lions in these districts on a general lion license tag. So pretty broad opportunity that was restricted when we went into the special and unlimited lion license structure. And so this would change that, provide a little more access to areas that are hard to get into and typically see very little harvest.
Wasn't 170 part of that?
This is being consistent with 170.
Okay, so 170 was the only one that was named. And is there any other district that you consider to be a problematic lion district? I thought over on the 120.
24, I think we were a little bit low, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. That was just 1 year in terms of meeting those quotas. These districts have been chronically low anyway.
Right.
And you're familiar with the Bob Marshall, but even when we are on general license and we had a quota, we never reached the quota. So this is just an opportunity to allow anybody who's got a license to and is willing to go in there, give them a shot.
Questions on the line proposal? Anything online there, Dylan? All right. Region 1 turkey proposal. Let's see, our proposal here is to increase the number of regional 199-10 turkey licenses. These are beardless turkeys. Increase the number that are available per hunter to 4 from 1. Rationale here is our turkey numbers are increasing. I think of the game complaints I get in the winter, the vast majority are people frustrated that they have turkeys in their backyard. Or on their porch, or you name it. And so what this would do is increase the number of tags someone can hold from 3 during the year to 6. And again, with a focus on beardless turkeys during the fall season, which runs from September 1st to January 1st.
The hard part is getting access. So for those that can get access to shoot multiple turkeys, it's a real bonus.
Questions about turkeys? I think the final proposal I have to discuss is a boundary change proposed for hunting district 170. And this is a proposal that will fix an error within the legal descriptions. Our maps are correct, but the legal description currently excludes basically the Bad Rock Canyon WMA from any hunting district. So what this does is would change the boundaries so that in the word descriptions, it encompasses Bad Rock Canyon WMA within hunting district 170. We also have a minor tweak to the language of 140 to clarify that junction with 170 there, just to the east of Bad Rock Canyon Wildlife Management Area. Questions there? I don't know if you want to, or
That's it? Oh, I've got to say 121 slides.
There are some other slides at the end of this that are part of this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that,
Submit your comments to the commission. It's super important that you're specific about what you want. You know, it's okay to say I hate life and I hate Tabor and all that. And that's usually what I get, but it's a lot more helpful and actionable if you give me something really specific, like, you know, the quote is this, and I really think it should be this, and this is why. You know, with a little bit of information, so we understand why you're thinking the way you're thinking. So just don't complain. Give us a sense for what you want to see changed and a good explanation as to why.
and
And that's really, those are the kind of, as commissioners, those are the kind of emails we really focus on.
and I think that's been, and if anytime you're making comment, whether it's to the commission, to an FWP proposal out there that doesn't involve the commission, EAs, those are the kind of comments that are the most beneficial to the decision makers to help inform their decision. In general, I don't like it, or those kind of things don't help much, but yeah, as Commissioner Tabor said, make it as specific as you can. And I think that will be very beneficial to the commission in terms of going through those comments and trying to make heads or tails of the hundreds, if not thousands of comments you get on every season setting process. Any questions? Some folks came in late too, and after this, if you want to talk about anything or go over some stuff, we'd be glad to go over some, but any questions online? All right,
Comment from Dawn about concern about permit time from a vehicle.
which,
Just Dawn's concerned about permit time from the vehicles. And so I'd say, Dawn, write those comments into the.
yep. So yeah, again, if you have any comments or concerns about any of these proposals, and even if you're in favor of them, you know, we have a tendency, I think the commission does too, to hear folks that are just opposed, but if you like something, that's a good comment as well. So yeah, if you have concerns about the permit to hunt from a vehicle or you support it either way, make sure you get that into the comments.
I guess the other thing that I'd comment for both the people in the room online is that, like I got an email 3 days ago that said, you know, given the declining population in region 1 of our elk, let's go to special permit. First of all, let's choose your weapon, choose your season, and go to special permit, all of which are potentially fairly aggressive remedies to try to step in the way of population control. So something of that magnitude is not likely, you know, especially since we started way back in June and went through the process that Dylan outlined. We're not likely going to do something like that now. You know, we'll tweak what's been proposed. I don't know if you caught the last commission meeting, but at the end, there was 2 or 3 of the more major groups. I think the Wildlife Federation stepped up, a couple of them, and they said, you know, the process still lacks something, because if you got a really good idea and you want it, where do you go with it? Well, the idea is you're supposed to go to the region. Well, sometimes the region will look at it and say, yeah, or they don't. And some people get frustrated, like nobody else ever does to talk about it. It didn't get publicly processed. It just kind of got killed at the very entry. And so, you know, I made the comment at the end that what we're going to explore, and I talked to the director about this after the meeting, what we're going to try to explore is the possibility of holding a couple of days session where people could come with proposals in front of the commission, and they present it in a very specific format. They have to provide boom, boom, boom. It'll all be according to a format. And they make their pitch, their best pitch. This is why we think it has to happen. This is why everything else. The commission would look at it and say that seems to have merit. And we either turn it over to the department for analysis of potential inclusion, or we wouldn't. And that way it has a public vetting, public kind of involvement process. It takes a little bit of the pressure off the department. That is one of the things that Dustin said, well, I don't want every idea out of the sun because we don't have the resources to do that. so that's why if we create a fairly high bar, a standard of how to submit these proposals and give them good due consideration, that way we can step it up. So I always use the example that I think when I first came on the commission a few years back, somebody had the idea that we should expand the upland game bird season further into January just to provide more opportunity. And on the surface, it was like, that might have some merit. And initially, when we talked to the department, it's like, well, biologically, that's not really a problem. But then we came to find out, well, the private landowners were like, wait, are you kidding me? We can't get rid of these people soon enough. And now they're going to ask them to have property another month. And then interestingly enough, the dog folks said, that's too tough on the dogs. You know, you're going to tear up their paws and everything else. So once you got input from everybody else, and ultimately the decision made by the commission was, we're going to leave it where it's at. We think we got it right. But it was good public discourse, which is, I think I speak on behalf of all the commissioners. There's a real strong interest to continue to engage in good public discourse. Let those ideas get flushed out. And just because it didn't get selected doesn't mean it's not a good idea. Or it's, you know, it is good. But it may not be right for us. It may not be right for Montana. It may not be right at this time. Because there's a lot of call right now for change because of all the pressure that's happening. I mean, what I do hear every day is where did all these hunters come from? You guys maybe have experienced it, but where everybody is going, it seems like there's more people. And, you know, it's like, why is that happening? State's growing. Montana's not a secret. All those things and more. So anyway, that's to come. But if any of you have pretty material proposals at this point, just recognize we're a little late deep into the thing to do something like that. But we're still open for any kind of changes. And in particular, because the department did this, eliminating the span on the special permits. So I'll use the example of 701, which probably triggered this rule. Go back and look at each of the special permit quotas and make sure you're okay with those. Because it could be that any of the regions have proposed a lower special permit level. Now that they don't have a range to work with, they might have gone low. And if that's your favorite district to go hunt in, and historically there's been 50 or 70 permits, and now they're proposing only 75, that's going to be a very small line item somewhere buried in. You got to go look for that. So make sure you read the detail of your district, your quotas and permits and everything else, so that, you know, those numbers look right to you if they look like they could change.
You know, the time for the bigger ideas like you're talking about is scoping or even before.
Yeah.
And so June's when they should have brought these in, but it's so hard to get people to respond when there's nothing on the table. Now they're talking about specifics and they go, oh, we should have done this, but you really need to push it up so that you have time to think about it, public has time to talk about it, and the department has time to analyze it. So earlier the better. Even June's late for something that big.
Yeah.
Well, I know the state and the department in general get sometimes frustrated when we get compared to other states, other processes. I had the unique experience of attending a board of hunting and a board of fishing session like this, where they do just this, and anybody can bring a proposal. So you had very highfalutin groups, you know, commercial fishermen would be represented by paid lobbyists, putting a proposal in front of the board of fish, all the way down to a group of 15 fishermen from the Kenai that felt really strongly, and everything in between. So anybody could do this. And it was really a cool process to watch. And I think it has some merit, but it requires some teasing out, and we'll see if it stays live or if there's any other way to do it. Because at this point, there still is a fairly high level of frustration throughout the state of people wanting to get their ideas into the system and not feeling like they can get it done other than talk to your commissioner and let them drop it as a bomb at the end, which frustrates the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
Because I've done that as a commissioner. I made changes at the very end. It's like, well, you didn't give us time, you didn't give us notice. It's like, well, that's the process right now. So unless we change the process, you know, so we can get it up front, get more people involved, that's kind of the only way we can effectuate change. So.
Good.
Well, if you look at this room, there's like, look, how many of us in here came to this meeting? And how many people honestly listened to the commissioner meetings? I used to listen to every one of them when I had time, but, there's so many people out there hunting and nobody comes to these meetings and nobody, and they all get frustrated. I tell them all the time, go online and comment, and like, they don't listen. I'm like, they do, but you have to do it for, oh, they don't pay any attention. I'm like, they do, if you do it early and you don't be an ass about stuff. That's the biggest problem. So trying to get through to the general public is the biggest problem. And this guy sitting right here, he knows what that's like. He deals with the public all the time. I mean, so.
But I would say, like, for instance, I'll get out of the blue, let's say in July, or no, pick a different, maybe May. It's like, I want the hunting quota for 130 to be something else. It's like, okay, out of context, out of sequence, and nothing I can do about it now. That's really what it comes down to. Out of the thousands of emails that we're trying to respond to. So it has to be pertinent to what's coming up next. Because ask me right now about what we're going to do for fishing regulations when we're going into season setting. We're not going to talk about fishing. We're talking about wildlife. And so, but you're exactly correct on the way you approach it. You know, I get folks are mad for a whole lot of reasons, you know, but everybody, I think, is doing the best they possibly can. And I really do believe the commissioners deeply care about trying to get it as right as they can. And so just make your case as to, you know, and what's super helpful to me is if somebody's thought out the pros and cons of what they're even talking about. Because it's really easy to come back with a one sentence short and say, but did you consider this? It's like, no, I really didn't. And so think through your proposal so that you understand what all the consequences are economically, you know, socially, you know, what's happening with the wildlife, all those things, because all that comes into play in the decision making process.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of the hunters, they don't understand that. They don't think about, well, you've got the grass, you've got the weeds, you've got the trees, you've got the squirrels and the chipmunks and the birds, and they just think about deer. You know, they don't think about the bears, wildlife, and all that other stuff out there too. So.
Well, and the non-consumptive public, right, that's becoming a bigger, louder, more specific voice that has to be listened to, that has the rights to comment and everything else, just like everyone else does. So an example of that would be 313, where we had as many people arguing that it should stay on special permit, not because they're worried about trophy or not because they're worried about opportunity, but because they wanted to maintain as many animals on the ground so that they could show it in a non-consumptive wildlife viewing opportunity as possible. So that's a whole new angle that the states haven't really had to deal with much, but we're dealing with it a lot now.
Well, just like Ron said about those elk in the valley. That has people talking about the elk in the valley floor. Well, they cause traffic jams on 206, you know. And that's the biggest problem with that. I mean, you see 15 cars out there on Highway 206 just looking at the elk. You know, it's like,
But you also don't learn. They cause accidents.
that's what I'm talking about. And those people don't want to kill it.
3 weeks ago. Oh, God.
So any other questions specific to the proposals? Good general discussion.
As far as on the comments that you get from this, is this any comparable to what we used to get? When you had your meetings in December and January and stuff, I mean, we were filling some big rooms where we usually had something pretty contentious we were talking about, but I mean, this is ridiculous. You know?
Yeah, and I don't know how many are on. Some of those are FWP staff. How many? And like three or four of them are FWP staff probably. Lindsay and Brian. And so, you know, it's varied. To be honest with you, when we didn't go have the virtual option, I think we had, like the first year you started, we had what, 14 or so show up in Kalispell. So I think a lot of it has to do with how contentious the proposals are and how engaged folks are. But I would say public participation has probably waned over what it used to be.
That's what I was wondering, because I mean, you know, obviously this is a ridiculous turnout. I mean, but we used to get a lot of people to show up. That's why I was wondering how many people are actually getting involved and sending in their comments and proposals and this type of thing compared to what we had.
I think we get a lot of comments, or the commission gets a lot of comments, and I know we got a fair number through our scoping, which is usually not really well attended. Seems like when you're just asking for ideas, we don't get a lot until you put something out, and then folks maybe have something to sink their teeth into, which is what these proposals are. So you get, I don't know how many comments, but it's got to be hundreds.
Just go around. Yeah. Upward 3,000 range, you know, in terms of individual, and that's not counting the robo stuff. It's they'll shut our boxes down with the robo panel, but putting those aside, and actual thoughtful comments, but the ones coming through the portal of the website where anybody can comment on any proposal and everything else, and then the department's got quite good at organizing that. We have probably one of the most competent people I've ever been around, Eric Wickman, and he's what his title is, but he's basically keeps the commission in line, and he's a military guy, and he's doing a job. But he takes all those comments and he gets them organized in a fashion, and they're being loaded up in our folders, and so we can view them pretty much daily, which is helpful, because otherwise you get overwhelmed by the sheer volume. And but what doesn't happen is there's no tally, you know, so like 34 against 25 for, you know, it's, you just get a sense for the theme, and you start seeing reoccurring comments come up, and that's when you start paying attention, like, you know, maybe there is a pattern. So, you know, like 130, what you did on whitetail, I think is in direct response of what happened 2 years ago, where we got some pretty meaningful input. And then I asked you, and I had this time, but then after we went through season setting, you met with some people, and you ultimately made a change, you know, and so to me, that's the process working. Now, some says it should have been done 2 years ago, perhaps, but the change was made this year, and it's a good change. It's probably appropriate for down there. So I don't have an answer for that. I know there are people that feel like the department isn't listening. I just have to take real, you know, objection to that, because I think the department is working harder now than it ever has to listen. I know the commission's trying hard, and the meetings have greatly improved in terms of how we're trying to, how much information we're getting out beforehand, including the amendments. So there's plenty of time for people to react. Now, because doing it the way the open meeting law works in Montana, it's a strange booger. It's not like legislation. So everybody comes to these meetings expecting that we do it just like, we can't do it like legislation. We have to promulgate everything in open. And so in that regard, you can't even get together beforehand and say, what do you think? Can't do that. So the process is really important for the public to see. And that means if there's going to be a major change from what the department's proposing, the sooner that change is made public, the sooner the public has the ability to react to it. So really pay attention 2 weeks before the meeting. That's prime time. Keep checking the website and look for those amendments to start going through, because that's when you're gonna see what seemingly the final position of the commission is starting to look like. Based on the proposals that are put forth.
Yeah, the only comment Larry I'd have is that, we talked about the season setting process as it happens every 2 years. But me and my staff, we're in season setting discussions every day, all year round. And since I got here in the off seasons, we didn't do it during COVID, but we actually went around and said, hey, you guys want to talk about elk regulations? Let's talk about elk regulations. We opened the book and said, what do you want? What do you want to see? And so we've been trying to did the same thing with deer regulations. And we just had a round of discussions about mule deer, where we presented some of the information we had on our research project, which provided us a lot of information on mule deer. And like I said, we got some places we had 4 people show up. Some people we had like 12. So it's me, if you really care about this stuff, you got to be engaged and show up to those meetings as well, because that's where we're learning stuff and getting feedback, and we can have open discussions with folks about seasons and why we don't go a certain direction, or maybe why we go this direction. And that's really helpful for us, because when you get to this more formal process, it's harder for us as staff to have those kind of open conversations, because we've already got a proposal out there. Now it's into a very formal process. You can turn in comments, which is great. You need to do that. But if you want to have those discussions like Commissioner Tabor was talking about early, to see if you can impact a season proposal, that needs to happen early. And we've tried to establish a platform to have those conversations, but we got to get people to attend.
That's what I was kind of thinking. Now that this is all already formal, like it's kind of time to get the ball rolling on like 26, 27 type stuff now and get ideas with Region 1 already. Or kind of get that ball rolling for what would be a good idea to put the biologists all together and kind of get stuff, kind of what's everybody's spitball stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of get people together and be like, okay, what do you think's a good idea for this?
Sure. And we're always interested in having those, and I'd like to bring back those discussions, because it's the off season. That's not when the decisions are being made, but get a group of people together and say, hey, okay, well, it's been a while since we've talked about elk regulations. We're going to have a new elk plan hopefully coming out pretty soon that will also inform or help direct some of these, some of the proposals. So it'd be a good time to go back and revisit elk again in terms of regulations in light of a new elk plan and what that means. Because I think there's a lot of folks who turn in, like Commissioner Tabor said, hey, I want to see this, but they're not thinking about the ramifications down the road. Here's a really good example. We've heard pretty loud and clear, everybody wants more elk, which I love elk. Love to see more elk. But from a formal standpoint, when you change our objective to a higher objective, what does that mean? We need to now look at reducing female opportunity. And I don't think people are getting that trade-off that, hey, we want to grow more elk, especially in places where we have cow harvest. That means we're going to have to maybe back off on the levers we can pull, which is the female harvest. And so then we hear from the folks that are upset because, well, I want to be able to have opportunity to harvest a cow. We have to back off of it. So
that's a perfect example. Another one was like we were talking right before the meeting started. And that is intuitively, a lot of people think, well, if we're concerned about mule deer, let's say, let's just go to special permit. That'll help protect them. Well, because all you're really doing is focused on the males, and that's not really what's going to get the job done. So mule deer, of course, is a much bigger, very complicated issue. Everybody.
And that's what we did at these mule deer discussions. We actually put a bunch of different things that we've been hearing from sportsmen, and we put it into pros and cons in terms of trade-offs. Okay, you want this? Here's what it does, and here's what the pros and cons are making that decision are. And so you're more informed and say, okay, well, I can live with that, or no, yeah, I didn't think about that. Maybe I don't want to go that direction. And I think those are the kind of conversations we need to have with the public. So you're thinking about the big picture, and it seems like a small tweak, but what I've learned is that these things are all so intertwined that you make a small change over here, it has a tendency to affect a lot of different things down the road that sometimes we don't even think about. So I think recognizing the trade-offs when you make a decision is important to making informed decisions. So it's just, increasing the buck to doe ratio in an area where we have CWD, while you're increasing the risk of CWD becoming very high in terms of prevalence. Those are the kind of things that you have to think about when you're making those type of proposals. So.
And trade-off, your proposal to remove the permit to hunt for elk in 120 and 130. That's the only thing left you have to impact antlerless harvest there, so.
Yeah, the only other thing that we could maybe do is archery. It's still open for either sex on archery. How much harvest we get through archery, probably not a lot. But this will make it so there was a little bit of an inconsistency when we went through the simplification process, because most of the districts that have no antlerless opportunity didn't also allow permit to hunt from a vehicle. 130 and 120 were left in there. So this is actually a little bit of a cleanup to make it very consistent with the rest of the region. If there's no B licenses for elk, there's also no permit to hunt from a vehicle opportunity on those. In areas where we have antlerless B licenses, those kind of opportunities, we're offering the permit to hunt from a vehicle on a general license for a cow. So.
What about the youth one? I know that they took that away last time on 120, 130 and stuff, but did the rest of the state keep that then, or?
Other parts of the state still have youth opportunity for antlerless elk as well as deer, and we still have youth opportunity for whitetails here, but because we're trying to grow elk in most of our districts, we've backed off in that. And I think there's even been a few bad instances before I even got here, some shootouts and stuff, even in Region 1. So there was just kind of a bad taste, I think, in a lot of people's mouth for that, as well as you're offering youth to shoot a cow when that opportunity isn't available to anybody else, and you're trying to grow elk. So we've backed away off of that. We offer the opportunity where we think we can have it, which is on white-tailed deer, and not on elk. So in terms of whitetails, for the elk, there's no antlerless opportunity in Region 1 for youth. Yeah, it's quite a while ago. Yep. Yeah, the only youth opportunity we have for like antlerless animals is for whitetails. It's all season long. Any other questions, comments?
Just a couple more general ones out of Region 1. One, we've hunted 410 and 621 quite a bit last few years. That's east of Fred Robinson, 621 north and 410 south. And the department had a shoulder season for elk on that. We actually went over last year during the shoulder season of 410. We couldn't find elk, and talked to a lot of landowners, and they said they'd be happy to let us shoot elk, but they didn't know where they were either. And I see the department pulled the shoulder seasons from both of those units in this proposal. And I think that's appropriate, because that's the department doing what it said it would do as numbers decline, and they'll pull back on the shoulder season. And I understand in Region 6, that actually got a round of applause at the public meeting there. Two other things, and I think these are probably more legislative. And one is the bird dog training season. And I had a friend in Sweetgrass Hills in August, and a non-resident hound handler pulled in with a horse trailer full of dogs. And he just worked the bejeebers out of the Sweetgrass. And yeah, it's a really good bird area. That's the real concerns about working those young broods that hard. And they were really unhappy with how he was treating his dogs too. I think I just pounded the place. But I think most of that's legislative. The other concern is the heritage muzzleloader season, and nobody's worried about shooting cow elk, but you get the wrong conditions or the right conditions with a lot of snow and cold weather. There's a potential to kill some pretty nice bucks and bulls in some of these districts where we're trying to protect them a little bit. And I'm hearing a lot more grumbles about that. And again, that's a legislative fix, but normally those bucks and bulls would be free and clear, and now they got to put up with another 9 days, I think. The guys, all of a sudden, there's a lot of muzzleloader hunters out there. So,
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
That's going to be coming up out here real quick. I should say up, maybe not necessarily real quick, but not too far down the road, they're doing a public survey of the people that purchased the non-resident as well as resident hound training or bird dog training licenses that train on wild birds. And it'll help to try to inform some future decisions on what's going to happen there. And the other thing I did check on too is that the upland bird regs are going to be pulled from the December meeting. There's going to be, it's going to be moved so they can get a process going on that. There's still a ton of people that are really interested in this whole season dates and season lengths for residents versus non-residents and a lot of stuff. And there's enough time to still evaluate those regulations and get them in time for the spring season. But we've got time to do it. They're having to do it at the December meeting, do a little more informed, maybe decisions and stuff on that. So that'll be something that will happen after the December. Great job. Just found that today.
You may recall that there was some proposed legislation that was trying to dabble around in that area and ultimately was pulled primarily because the department said we ought to be able to do this ourselves through the commission process. So it let us do that. And so that's precisely what's happening then with the other game regs. And there's just, in particular, when you start looking at eliminating non-resident opportunities for certain things like birds, there's a lot of other impacts that you're having, especially on those rural communities and how they rely on people coming in and everything else, and so certainly get it when it's like, we don't want another elk hunter here other than the 17,000 we're supposed to get. But, beyond that, if you're going to start limiting all those different opportunities for people to come in. The other part about Region 6 that I think is happening when we look at that B tag limitation, and it's a genuine concern because if you've been out in Region 6 and 7, you've seen this happen, but you'll see non-residents come in and go away with a trailer with, dozens of bodies on it. And those guys are getting multiple doe tags and just mowing them down and hauling them out of the state. And so I do believe that there's some tag limitations being suggested for Region 6. I just can't recall what they are specifically.
Wasn't there a statute on non-residents?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
they only get two?
Yeah, so it's going to be the enactment of that.
Yep.
And that was again a cause and effect. So those are the types of inputs that we just constantly want to be looking at. And it's the same thing with lions. We tried at one point to say, okay, as we watch this experiment unfold, and now you got to pretty much stay and play where you want to do it, designate your area. So this concept of unlimited permits makes you declare where you want to go, which is a precursor. It's starting to creep now into elk and deer, and there's probably going to be more of it as we try to get people to stay in certain parts. Otherwise, you get massive concentration in certain areas. So the people in Region 6 and 7, if we see 7 or 15 on a license plate, we're going to shoot them as they come in, and it's like, because everybody's flooding over to them, and so everybody that lives over there is like, hey, we don't, they look at us as much as non-residents as they do for people come from the Dakotas. So we're going to have to be thinking about that long term in terms of distribution of where folks go to hunt. I mean, I wish that wasn't the case, but as the state grows and you get more and more pressure, you got to start thinking about these types of things.
Anything else, anything online?
No,
Need to
there was
address?
another comment that Corey made about mandatory reporting. And I think it's just to encourage him to submit those comments.
Yep.
To the commission.
Yep.
And there's pros and cons to mandatory reporting.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's an ongoing,
No, just in
no,
general.
just mandatory reporting versus the current survey methods we use. That's an ongoing discussion. I think it's getting some traction. We just have to figure out how to do it and how to do it
Well,
right.
a great deal of it has to do that it involves an IT solution, and that involves a lot of money. It's not something where you just snap your fingers. So that's a bigger, broader solution set to try to get it to move towards some of these other
Yeah.
systems that other states have.
Yeah.
So,
Very good. Well, thanks again, everybody, and thanks everybody online for tuning in. This recording of this presentation will be posted on the Region 1 Facebook page tomorrow. So if anybody wants to go back and rewatch anything or rehear anything, it'll be there. And then the comment deadline is November 21st. But thanks again, everybody, and have a nice night.